Hi, my name is William Catalan. Welcome to the 2023 Speakers Bureau online training. If at any point you need to pause the video, please feel free to do so. You can always email me about any questions you may have, or if you need clarifications about any of these topics. Lubbock Area United Way has been around for 77 years, and we've been around for that long because we have a superpower, and that superpower is our ability to bring people together to create solutions and address problems at their roots. One of the ways we are able to identify the problems in our community is by being part of a larger organization. That organization being United Way Worldwide and United Ways of Texas. Do pay a very small fee to be part of these organizations. That's 1.5% of every dollar goes to United Way Worldwide. But in return, we get lots of data here locally that we use to identify the problems in our community. So how are we different than other organizations here in Lubbock? Well, we are not single issue focused, meaning that we are not only looking at one problem at a time. We are looking at the broad spectrum, the most chronic issues in our community. And in order to solve those issues, we have what we call our strategic initiatives, which we'll talk more about in the next slide. Also, because we are not single issue focused, we are able to adapt to the problems that our community is facing today and tomorrow. One example of United Way adjusting to the needs of the community is in the early 2000s, high school graduation rates were dropping. United Way started funding programs to increase graduation high school rates. After high school graduation rates went back up, we then shifted to early childhood education, third grade literacy, and adult literacy. And in order to solve the issues that are most chronic in our community, we need to be well informed. This means having a deep connection to the nonprofit, public, and private sectors. This means using our superpower and bringing in the right people to a table to discuss our local issues and how to solve those issues. We also have the ability to mobilize everyone in that community. When you go out and speak at employee campaign meetings, you'll be speaking to roughly 10,000 people. Last year in 2022, we spoke to over 9,000 people. Our numbers dwindled since COVID, but they are slowly climbing back up. So we are expecting 10,000 people to hear our message this year. Something to keep in mind as you go out and speak at employee campaign meetings is, why are you here? Why are you volunteering at Speakers Bureau? Maybe you were voluntold, which is totally fine. But as you go out and speak at campaign meetings, you come to realize that there are lots of people who have never heard of United Way or are completely unaware of the services that we can provide, services that your organization is currently providing, services that they probably need. As you begin thinking of your why and your story that you'll be sharing, know that your position is extremely vital to the success of this campaign. But no pressure, you will have all the resources needed and we will train you efficiently. So moving on to our strategic initiatives. You may have known them as priority areas in the past, but they have been recently renamed to strategic initiatives. We currently have 4: economic mobility, education, confronting violence, and mental health. Economic mobility is the newest of the 4. That one touches base upon the other 3 initiatives. We'll go more into depth as to what economic mobility is when we begin talking about ALICE. Education. You may have heard of an event called United We Read, and that's when we go out and read to all the second graders in Lubbock County on the same day at the same hour. We do this to promote reading to kids and parents, and most importantly, to draw awareness to the learning shift that happens in the 3rd grade. And the shift is that a child no longer learns how to read, but instead they are reading to learn. Meaning that a math problem now becomes a reading problem. And if a child is struggling with reading, then they're going to be struggling with the other subjects in their schoolwork. Another literacy topic that is not much talked about is that we have a 13% illiteracy adult rate, meaning that about 1 in 10 adults struggle reading or cannot read. Thankfully, we have agencies working on this problem like Literacy Lubbock and Goodwill Resource Center that can help reduce the statistics of adult illiteracy rate. We also fund affordable, high-quality childcare because we know that childcare can be expensive. So we have the YWCA, Early Learning Centers, Guadalupe Parkway Centers, and Boys and Girls Club. And parents can feel confident leaving their kids at these agencies because they know the resources they'll be getting and the education that the agencies will be providing for their kids. Our third strategic initiative is confronting violence. That deals with child abuse and neglect, as well as domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. And you may not be aware, but child neglect has a higher rate than child abuse. And that is because child neglect can look a number of different ways. And one of those ways is when a child is being left unattended at home by themselves because the parent has to go to work. But as a parent, you're forced to make tough decisions when you cannot afford childcare and your family members cannot take care or look after your child, so you have to leave them by themselves at home. So what do? And this is just one of those situations that hundreds of people in our community are having to face each and every day. Just two quick statistics about child abuse and neglect. In the state of Texas, Lubbock ranks second highest of child abuse, only behind Abilene, Texas. On average, 3 children are confirmed cases of child abuse and neglect each day. Our last strategic initiative is mental health. And mental health is a topic that is often forgotten when it comes to the health of the human body. And I don't know if it's because there's a negative stigma behind mental health. At least for me growing up, it was looked down upon to seek out a counselor or think that you needed to go to a psychiatrist. But times are changing, and now mental health has a more positive look in the public eye. But there is still a lack of accessibility in mental health services. There's about 1 counselor per 900 people in Lubbock. The wait time to get a session is around 9 months. And that doesn't even guarantee that insurance will cover the cost. Now, our agency that is working on this issue is Family Counseling Services. And we also work alongside the West Texas Mental Health Coalition to promote mental health and improve accessibility to counselors. Our next slide is our community partners. We are currently partnered with 23 other agencies, and United Way funds specific programs at these agencies to promote wraparound services and prevent duplication of services. Just a quick side note, because this question tends to pop up a lot. Does United Way fund the entire operational expenses of the agencies that we partner with? And the answer to the question is no. We only fund specific programs for those agencies. For example, the YWCA has many programs, but one of the programs that we fund is the YWCA After School Care. So we don't fund all of their programs, just that one specifically we do fund. So keep in mind when thinking about how United Way funds our agencies, we fund their programs, not the agency itself. So the next topic that everyone loves to talk about, finance. We have a very strong financial position at United Way. We have the highest rating that nonprofits can get for transparency and accountability, that is Candid and Charity Navigator. On the slide, you can see that we have the 2022 membership logo on there. We are qualified for the 2023. We just don't have the logo yet, but we are qualified. So this next slide is probably one of the most important slides of this PowerPoint because it touches so many people in our population, and that is ALICE. ALICE is an acronym for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. And those are the people who have a full-time job, are earning just above the federal poverty line, but are struggling to make ends meet. These are your day-to-day people, your waiters, your retail clerks, gas attendants, people who are keeping our economy running. 26% of the Lubbock population is considered to be in ALICE. If you add the percentage of the people living in poverty, you get 44% of the population in Lubbock are struggling to make ends meet. So going back to our strategic initiative of economic mobility, how do you move up the corporate ladder? Economic mobility deals with education. Do you have your high school diploma, your GED, a specialized skill, or a bachelor's degree to further up your career? It also touches on safety. Well, if you have to go get your education somewhere else, do you feel comfortable leaving your children at home by themselves or not knowing where your next meal is going to come from because you spend that money on gas? And the mental health aspect as well of economic mobility. Well, how do you get your degree or climb up the corporate ladder if you're having to make sacrifices in other areas of your life? Well, do you feel safe at home? Can you leave your children at home by themselves? Do you have your education? Where's your next meal going to come from? How many hours are you having to work that day or that weekend? It's just so many different factors that we felt that we needed to add economic mobility to these strategic initiatives. And I'm sharing with you these scenarios to remind you of who you may be speaking to in the audience, and that the Alice population, again, 44% of the Alice population, a lot of them are facing these exact scenarios on a day-to-day basis. These next few slides, they're pretty much statistics, so I'm going to run through them real fast, but if you want more information, just let me know. Caught in the cross currents, and I do got to apologize for this slide if you're unable to see the diagram. I know the blue line may be blocking the numbers, but essentially the message of this slide is that in 2021, there was a 48% Alice population here in Lubbock. 2 years later, 2023, we have a 44% Alice population, poverty population included there as well. So you may think that 48% to 44%, like those are great news. We've dropped down 4% over the course of 2 years. And that's not entirely true, because as the population in Lubbock is growing, the household number for 2023 is actually higher than in 2021. Even though the percentage may be lower, the household number is actually higher. So that's something that we need to keep track of, especially in this new data coming in, is seeing the percentage change, but also seeing what numbers are actually telling us. Our next slide, demographics of Lubbock County households in hardship. These are households that are struggling, and it's broken down by demographics. I'm going to be comparing both columns at the same time. If you look at the highest hardship percentage under the 25 column, they are at 84%. A good guess, it's because they are going into entry-level jobs. They are just starting out in their careers. Maybe they're still in school. Maybe they have part-time. Transitional period in a young person's life. It's at 84%. If you compare that to the 45 to 64 years of age on the lowest hardship, yellow column, they are at 30%. It's mainly because those are people that have been established in their careers, probably looking toward to retirement. So big difference between the under 25 versus the 45 to 64 years of age. Next, comparing single female headed households at 80% versus married with children. The obvious answer is married with children. You have 2 incomes, 2 salaries supporting you and your spouse. If you need daycare, one parent can stay at home while the other one can keep working. Single female headed households, there's more struggles to that. There's also the unequal pay gap between males and females. So that's another issue with that demographic. The black households and the white households, 62% of the black households are in hardship versus the white households at 39%. The difference in the two of them, the lack of generational wealth between families and the effects of segregation. Looking out into the horizon, so inflation is stabilizing now and prices are not going down. Affordable housing, the mortgage and rent are up. People out of state are moving in state. And there is a skill gap. By 2030, 62% of Texas jobs require post-secondary credentials, but only 48% of Texans have earned a post-secondary credential. So that means that those people coming from out of state into state will be taking those jobs if Texans cannot fill in the required credentials for those positions. So now we are finally talking about your role as a volunteer for Speakers Bureau. Your role is to support the annual campaign by sharing about United Way and our community partners, sharing your story, sharing about services available in our area, asking your audience to give to a community fund, asking your audience to consider volunteering, and asking your audience to use services. If you notice, there are 3 things we ask our audience to do: to consider giving to a community fund. Donations that goes to the community fund are used to places where it's most needed. So even though donors can choose where their money is going to, the community fund ensures that that money is being used in places where we need it most in the community. So that's what we ask them to give to the community fund. We also ask them to consider volunteering. And the last thing we ask them to do is to use our services. That's something we added last year. We understood that there's a lot of people, a lot of donors that give us their hard-earned money that need these services. So we want them to know what services are available, but we also want them to use those services if they need them. The time commitment for this volunteer role is approximately 5 hours. It's August through December. It's 5 to 7 campaign meetings, and each meeting takes around 30 minutes. When you factor in this training and driving distance, traveling to and from your job site to the location of the campaign meeting, it's around 5 hours for this campaign season. Finding your story. It comes back to the why. Like, why are you volunteering? And why are you sharing the message of United Way and your agency to these people in the audience? So why does your agency exist? Why do you work or volunteer there? Why are you speaking? What's the goal or purpose? Why is your audience there? Why should your audience care? Now, obviously, we want people to donate money. But just as important, we want them to get involved in the community. We want them to volunteer. And also, we want them to use the services that your agencies provide. So adding these questions to your story will add emotion to your story, authenticity, and will help you find your why in your story of why you do what you do. So story structure. Every story has a basic structure to them. Middle, beginning, and end. It has a character, it has a problem, it has a turning point, and the resolution. Think of these things when you're making your story. Think of who the characters are. And always remember that your agency is a character. United Way is always a character. You yourself or the person you're speaking about are characters in your story. What is the problem? And the problem doesn't have to be complicated. The problem doesn't even have to be resolved either. Your story can be an ongoing story that you're sharing with the audience. The turning point in your story is when the problem gets fixed or the situation changes. And lastly, the resolution is that's how your story ends. But you'll ask the 3 asks: give to a community fund, get involved, and lastly, find the services for you. The 6 types of nonprofit stories. There is a Speakers Bureau handbook that you will have. I'll drop the link on the email for you so you can have it. It essentially helps you build your story. You have the challenge story, the creation story, impact story, the values, the improvement story, and the future story. Just some different types of story that can help you form your story. Goal and structure. The goal is to share why United Way is important to our community and inspire the audience to give. And the basic structure is explain the need. What is the need of the community, and like, why do we need our partner agencies? Why do we need United Way? You personalize it with a story, and then you ask them to give to a community fund, volunteer, or find the support that they need. Giving to a community fund, I've already talked about this, but just quick add-on on the last dot: program and financial oversight provided by trained United Way volunteers. If you haven't heard of our program review or stewardship review, our program review is a volunteer-led group of volunteers that look at the United Way funded programs that our agencies have and see how those programs, the outcomes, the objectives, the goals, see how many people are being impacted by those programs, and the volunteers pretty much do an oversight of those programs by visiting the agencies. Stewardship review is a similar process, except it's looking at the financials and seeing how the funds are being used in those programs. So be prepared. When I get contacted by a campaign coordinator or a loan executive for a speaker, we ask for them to give us a 3 days notice. So that gives you plenty of time to check your schedule and see if you'll be available to speak at that meeting. However, you will fill out a volunteer information sheet that you will give to me. And in that information sheet, you will have your schedule. Meaning if you work from 8 to 5, then say I am unavailable from 8 to 5, but I'm open on Saturdays. Or I'm free from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. Just some specifics in your schedule and your calendar. Obviously, some calendars change from week to week, but just give me an approximation of your calendar so that I can work with you. When I do receive those requests, If your availability matches the time frame of the meeting, I will then reach out to you with notice and see if you're available to speak at that meeting. Once you've accepted the meeting, I will give you special instructions as to where to park. For example, if it's at an 8 a.m. meeting or before hours at a bank, which door to enter through. Is there a code that you need, a password to access to get into the meeting? I will also give you information as to like how many people you should be expecting to arrive, so that, you know, if you prefer to speak to a smaller group, 0 to 10 people, or if you prefer to speak to a larger audience, 50 to 100 people, I will give you that information as well. I will also send you the time and location of the meeting so that you know where to go, along with the contact information of my cell phone number and the campaign coordinator's cell phone number as well, in case you need to call them. When you arrive at the meeting, the campaign coordinator will have your biography so that they can introduce you properly. There will always be a United staff member present or a loan executive. That's just so that in case something happens and catches you off guard, you will have support there from 1 or 2 other people. Usually a United staff member will always be there, but just in case we're not, a loan executive will be there in replacement of us. We will always give you a heads up to let you know who will be there and who's not. Just appropriately, obviously if you go into a warehouse, don't bring a suit. You don't want to get dirty. But also if it's a long walk, like a 5-minute walk from the front of the office to the meeting place, you don't want to wear heels or uncomfortable shoes. But we also understand that you may not have the opportunity to change, and we don't expect you to change every time you go into a meeting. But that's why we have United Way t-shirts. If you don't have a t-shirt, I can always get your size and give you a t-shirt so that you have it. You can just throw it on your suit or your dress shirt, just so that you can represent United Way and not be overdressed or underdressed. But we want you to feel comfortable when you go to these meetings. Tips for giving a great presentation: make sure to practice. The next week we will be having our speech practice session. We want you guys to come with at least a story prepared. You can print out your story and read it off the paper in front of us. We just want you to get your feet wet in sharing your story in front of an audience. Practice as much as you can. You can practice in your living room, in front of your partner, your spouse, your kids, a pillow. Just practice saying your story out loud. Limit yourself to one impactful story. You don't want to get 2 stories mixed up or have to worry about saying one story or saying the other story. Just stick to one story. It makes it easier for you in remembering your story and rehearsing it. Also, if you stick to your story, I myself as well will be hearing your story, and I will try to match you to the best possible audience that your story can impact. Hold something in your hand. If you're a fidgeter like me, holding a pen or a button or just something small in your hand can help the nerves get out of your body and help you stay still and firm. Use a few helpful statistics. Just memorize a few statistics that you can share with the audience off the top of your head. That way you can tell the audience, hey, these are easy statistics, and this is my story, and this is why United Way is important. Don't use jargon or acronyms. So, for example, I shared about what the loan executives or campaign coordinators, right? Don't say LEs. They don't know what those jargon words are. Or like if you're representing an agency that's easy for you to memorize, like early learning centers, ELC, just say the whole name. That way your audience may have never heard of who your organization is or United Way. Just keep it simple for them. Splitting the room into 3 allows you to speak to the audience in 3 sections. That way you're equally giving as much attention to everyone in the room. Please speak from your heart, not your head. You can memorize your story, but just let it flow through you. The next slide is the video, but I will let you guys just watch the video. I'll put the link in the email that I sent you guys. Speech requirements. Already talked about community fund. Ask them to give to a community fund. Your speech has to be 5 to 7 minutes in length. Each meeting is around 15 to 20 minutes. Giving you guys 5 to 7 minutes should be plenty. You don't want to stay there over time just because the campaign coordinator may have other things they want to talk about. They will also be showing the campaign video most of the time, hopefully before you guys step up and speak, just to give the audience an idea of who you are, who you're representing. So 5 to 7 minutes is really the sweet spot for a speech. Talk about the community partner volunteers, talk about the United Way funded programs, and even better, if you're able to weave in multiple agencies into your story, that will allow the audience to really connect the dots in how your agency impacts their lives, but how other agencies can also impact your work line, but also their lives as well. Agencies that they probably never thought that they could use. Practice session. So it'll be next week of August 7th. I've already sent everyone their calendar invites or reminders. If not, I will send that to you this week and just send you a reminder or get a confirmation just to make sure that you'll be able to make your session. You will be in the room with 4 to 5 other speakers and 2 other United Way staff members, so like around 6 to 7 people per hour. That's just because everybody's going to share their story. We want you to share your story in front of an audience, not so we can critique you, but just to make you feel comfortable, give you tips, constructive criticism. And if you have any questions about your story, you may want to change something, we're there to support you. Email me your biography, please. That way we can have the campaign coordinators introduce you properly. It can be something as easy like, hi, my name is William Catalan. I work with United Way. I've been there for 2 years. I recently got promoted to the donor engagement manager position, and I work alongside other volunteers. It'll be somewhere around 4 to 5 sentences for your biography. That's it for the training. If you have any questions, please shoot those to me. Speech practice sessions begin next week. Please give me a confirmation as to whether or not you can attend the training. Again, thank you guys for coming to this online training. I hope you were able to get a good idea as to what Speakers Bureau is, what United Way is, and why your agency matters, and why United Way matters, and why it's really important to share the message of giving people hope to the community. Anyways, thanks. We'll see y'all soon.